Hello guys, good evening. Welcome to today's session. Hello guys, good evening again. Welcome to today's session. Today we're going to start a new topic called budgeting. Okay, so I'm going to treat budgeting in twofold. One, looking at the quantitative aspects of budgeting. So we're going to start with budgeting today. Budgeting. So we're looking at the quantitative aspects of budgeting first before we go to the theoretical aspects of budgeting. Okay? So in the quantitative aspects of budgeting, we'll be looking at high-low method. Okay. We're looking at correlation. We'll be looking at regression. Looking at time series. And finally, looking at learning curve. So this is what we'll be looking at in budgeting. This is the quantitative aspect of budgeting, an important topic with performance management and also management accounting. You will learn something with the high-low method. Okay. So with let's start with the high-low method. And most organizations, we have mixed cost. What is mixed cost? Now we need to understand, let me start with total cost. Total cost. For a company to be highly competitive, for a company to understand their finance perspective, in the first, you need to understand your cost. And most organizations, our cost is broken down into different elements. We have variable cost. We have fixed cost. We have some costs also that have both variable and fixed. And those costs, we call them mixed cost or step cost. Okay? So total cost is our fixed cost plus variable cost. This gives you total cost. Fixed cost plus variable cost. Okay? What's a fixed cost? Fixed costs, these are costs that tend to be fixed irrespective of the level of activities, they are fixed. Now, if we do a sketch or graph to understand your fixed cost, here we can see is our output, and these are activity, level of activity. So we have 1 here, 2, 3, let's say we have 4 level of activity. So this can be our fixed cost. Fixed costs, these are costs that tend to be constant, irrespective of the level of activity. Meaning, if the activity change from 1 to 2, from 1, it's here. From 2, also, it's here, the same line. 3, it's here, the same. So even though activity changes, the cost remain constant. These are fixed costs. Okay? Now, variable costs. Variable costs are costs that change in line with the level of activities. When activity changes, variable costs also change. Now, for instance, variable costs go this way. These are variable costs. So at 1, we can have variable cost of here. At 2, our variable cost. See, keep changes going up. As variables goes up, variable cost goes up. Right? Unlike fixed cost, remain the same, irrespective of the level of activity. Okay? So, having have the basic idea of fixed cost and variable cost, we have fixed cost, we have mixed cost. Their costs have some element of fixed and some element of variable. So as an accountant, we need to differentiate that cost. We need to remove the fixed cost from the variable cost in that cost. Okay, so the method, one of the methods that we use to differentiate cost, to separate cost from fixed and variable, is what we call high-low method. Okay, this is where we come about high-low method. High-low method is a technique that we use to separate fixed cost from variable cost. So how does it work? We'll have a list of costs. We have a list of costs. So with high-low method, focus on, as the name goes, high-low. You set your table as high and low. So you look for the high activity and also the low activity. The high activity, what is the cost to that high activity? Also the low activity, what is the cost to that low activity? That's your focus. You have different costs. You have different activities and their cost. Different activities and their cost. So you identify the high activity and also the low activity. And those activities, trace them with their cost. Okay, then we can solve. That's how we calculate variable cost and fixed cost using high-low method. So let's see an example of how we can treat high-low method. Now for this, we have a month of January to September. Number of guests, so the activities, number of guests, and total cost. So you see each level of activities, which is the number of guests here, has its own cost. So in this question, we are asked to calculate the cost for September. Total cost for September. For now, let's ignore September cost. Okay? For now, let's ignore September cost. So let's assume ends at August. Let's try to understand the high-low calculation first before we start looking for figures. Ends at August. Okay? So now we are asked to calculate the variable cost of this table and to calculate the fixed cost of this table. You get? So what's the variable cost? What's the fixed cost? We don't know. So for us to calculate the variable cost and fixed cost from this table, we can use high-low method, we can use correlation, we can use our regression analysis. Okay? So because we are starting with high-low method, so now let's use high-low method to solve this problem. Now, calculate variable cost, fixed cost, and total cost. Okay, so using high-low. Using high-low method. So we are to calculate the variable cost per unit. And if we have the variable cost per unit, ultimately we can have the variable cost in total. And we calculate our fixed cost, hence total cost. Okay, so now there we go. So look at the number of guests. What's the highest number of guests? What's the highest figure? Highest figure from January 1.5, February 2.3, March 1, April days, and so on. I can see the highest is May. May we have 4.545. That is the highest activity. And what's the cost related to that activity? The cost related to this activity in May is this one. So this is our high activity. And what's the low activity? The low activity, we can see 1,000 in March. So 1,000 in March, and so this is the low, and this is the high. So out of all this data, we only use these two lines, March and April. So that's only we are going to use to calculate variable cost and fixed cost using high-low method. Before I calculate, this is one of the disadvantages of high-low method. Take notes. This is management accounting. You need to understand advantage, disadvantage, and all of those stuff. We have several data, of which we are only using two data to make decision. We are only using two data, March and April, to calculate high-low method using the variable cost and to calculate variable cost and fixed cost using high-low method. This is why we bring about the regression, the correlation. Correlation now, we are using all the information, which is more accurate. Unlike high-low method, we have all this information. We are only picking two lines from the information. When we get to correlation, regression, you will see the difference. So for now, let's understand high-low method. We are asked to calculate fixed cost and variable cost using high-low method. The concept is look at the data, identify the high activity, identify the low activity. The high activity, we've identified the high activity to be May. So high May, which is 4545. And the cost to this one is 371,225. This is the high. And we look for the low. The low activity we identify to be match, which is 1,000. And the cost to that is 105,450. So this is the cost to the low activity. This is our first step. We identify the high activities and the cost, low activity and the cost. This is the first step for ILO method. The second step, we find the difference. What's the difference? We do like this and the difference. The difference between 4,545 and 1,000 would be 3,545. There's a difference, right? And for this one, let me use calculator. 371,225 minus 105,450. We have 265,775. So we have this is the second step. We find a difference between the high activity and low activity, high amount and low amount. This is the second step for high-low. The third step now is to calculate the variable cost per unit. The variable cost per unit, remember, this is the value. This is in dollar terms. From the question, you can see total cost. This is in dollar term. All this in dollar. And this number of guests, this is a unit. Okay? So now, we need to find variable cost. Don't mind me, I'm a lazy writer. I cannot write variable cost all. I'm so lazy. Don't be like me, it's a bad practice, okay? So variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit, the formula is the total amount, this dollar term, divided by unit. So this we have 265,775 divided by 3,545. What do we have here? So our variable cost per unit is 74.97. This is our variable cost per unit, 74.57. Now we need to calculate variable cost in total. How can we get variable cost in total? You can use either of the activities. If you want to use the high activity, if you want to use the low activity, either activity use fine, you have the same answer. For instance, now I'm using high activity. You practice at home, use the low activity. Okay. So now I need variable cost in total. It said it's variable cost in total equals to variable cost per unit multiplied by number of units. This is the formula. Variable cost per unit multiplied by number of units. So the variable cost per unit, I have 74.97 multiplied by number of units. I told you can use either the high unit or the low unit. The high unit is 4,545. The low unit is 1,000. Whichever one you use is fine. Okay, so let me use the high unit, 4,545. So my variable cost per unit, my variable cost in total now, 74.97 multiplied by 4,545. This will give me 340,738.6. So I will say 73. Let me round up. 739. This is my variable cost in total. Okay, so now let's calculate our fixed cost. Now we have our variable cost per unit, we have variable cost in total. Now we need fixed cost. Sorry, I have to bring this up. Okay. And okay, so now we have our variable cost in total. Now, remember, our total cost is equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. Our total cost, because we use the high activity to calculate our variable cost, is high activity. Because we use the high activity, so we're going to use the value for the high activity. If we have used the low activity of 1,000 to calculate our variable cost, then we'll use the low activity in value. So because we use the high activity, so our total cost for the high activity is 371,225. Okay, so total cost is 371,225 equals to, we are looking for fixed cost now. We don't have fixed cost. Plus, we have our variable cost to be 34073. Is that okay? So therefore, our fixed cost will be total cost minus 371,225 minus 34073. 337,152. So this is our fixed cost. Any question? So these are our fixed cost. So if we have used the low activity, this ends this question for the fixed cost and variable cost. So if we have used the low activity, let's see how it will look like. Okay, for learning purpose, let's see how it will look like. So our variable cost per unit, we have our variable cost per unit calculated already to be 74.97. 74.97 is our variable cost per unit. Multiply by number of units, we say 1,000, right? 1,000. So 74.97 multiplied by 1,000. This will give 74,970. This will be our variable cost in total. Now, we know total cost is equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. Now, because we use the low activity of 1,000, we are going to use total cost, the low activity cost for 1,000, which is how much? 105,450. So total cost is total cost here now is 105,430, right? Equals to, we are looking for fixed cost plus our variable cost now is 74,970. So therefore, our fixed cost is equals to, we cross multiply. This figure is in positive, one come over become negative. So it's 105 minus 74,970. So 105. Let's first check the figure. Yeah, 105,450. Sorry, not 430. 105,450. 105,450. Sorry, my mistake. So it's 105,450 minus 74,970. So we'll have 30,480. Okay. So this is how we do the first question, how to separate fixed cost from variable cost. Sound good? Okay, guys. So let me do a brief revision before we take the next question. So with this question, remember, I told you high-low method, you look at the high activity and trace to the cost. You are not looking at the cost. You're not looking at the cost to the activity. This is wrong. You are tracing the activity to the cost. Okay, so you look for the high activity and trace to the cost, and low activity and trace to the cost. So you have your information now in front of you. You have your high activity, which is 4545, and trace to the cost, low activity and trace to the cost. And you calculate your variable cost per unit, which is the total amount divided by units, which we have 74.97. Okay, then now we have the variable cost per unit. Okay, now we're going to take the variable cost per unit, multiply by the number of units for us to get the variable cost in value. Number of units depend on which one you want to use. If you want to use high units, good for you. Low units, good for you. Whichever way you do, you have the same answer. Okay. Now, look at this. I decided to start with the high unit. I started with high unit, which is variable cost per unit, multiply by number of units, 74.97 multiplied by 4545. That's a high unit. This is the high unit. I use this high unit. Okay. And this gives me 340,739. Okay. Now I've got the variable cost in total. I have my total cost. So I can just substitute in the formula and get my fixed cost. So total cost equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. Total cost is 371,225. How do I get the total cost? Because I use the high unit of 4545 from the question. Because I use the high unit, I'm going to use this cost as my total cost. If I use the low unit, I will use the low unit cost as total cost. You get? That's why I use the high unit 371,225, because I use the high unit to determine my variable cost in total. Okay. So this gives me the variable cost in total of 340,739. Now I need my fixed cost. So put in my fixed cost and all, and I have my fixed cost now to be 3486. Okay. Now let's use the alternative. Assume I use the low activity. This ends the question so far. But if I choose now not to use the high activity, let me use the low activity alternative. I'm supposed to have the same answer. So my low activity, so my variable cost unit is this, multiplied by 1,000. My low activity is 1,000 from this one, or from the question itself, is my low activity. So because I use this 1,000 as my low activity now, then definitely I'm going to use this 105 as my total cost. Okay. Okay, so then I use my low activity now, 105 as total cost, and I have my variable cost here in total, and I will arrive at the same answer. See? So whichever method you use, you get the same answer. Now, let's look at another question for better understanding. Another question. Now we have from January to December. Okay? We have cakes baked in units. Even if we are not told in units, we know this is the unit aspect and this is the cost aspect. And we have the cost. We are asked to determine our total cost. We are asked to determine our variable cost and fixed cost. Okay, so my objective first, my step one, is to identify the high activity and low activity. That's my first step. And trace them to their amount, total cost. Okay? My second step is to find the difference. So let's go as we keep along. Now, let's study this table, cake baked, the unit. What's my high activity? My high activity, I see 125 or October 125. So October is going to be my high, 125. Okay. October is going to be my high, 125. And my low activity is August. August, I have 70. So August is going to be my low. I think 70 is the lowest from all of these. And this is my high. Yeah. So I have my high activity. This is the first work you have to do. Identify, look the data. Identify which one is the lowest and which one is the highest. So the lowest from this data is 70. and the highest from this data is 125. So now I can set my high and my low. My high activity is 125. And what is the cost to this high activity? The cost is 5,550. That's the cost to this high activity. And my low activity is 70. And what is the cost to this low activity? Is 3750. 3750. Okay. Now, step 1 is done. Step 2, my difference. My step 2. Let me use calculator. Just 125 minus 70. This gives me 55. Step 2. And the next one, 5550 minus 3750. This gives me 1800. Step 2 done. Take your time, don't rush. Your step 1, identify the low activity and the high activity using your high-low. Step 2, find the difference. And my step 3 is to calculate my variable cost in units. We have the formula from the first question. So now, my variable cost per unit is equals to 1,800 divided by 55. This will give me my variable cost per unit. This is 32.73. These are variable cost per unit. This is my third step. Variable cost per unit. Take the total amount, total cost, divide by the unit activity. That gives me variable cost per unit. Now I need my variable cost in total. You get my variable cost in total. So my variable cost in value now in total is equals to variable cost per unit multiplied by number of units. So we already have the formula in the first example. I don't need to repeat formula again. So my variable cost per unit is 32.73 multiplied by, this time I'm going to start with low activity. Multiplied by, what's the low activity? My low activity here is 70. Come from this table, look at 70, or from the question 70. And this will give me 32.73 multiplied by 70. This will give me 2291.1. So 2291. 2291 will be, I will round up to 2291. This is my variable cost in total. And remember, total cost, which is our purpose. We have our total cost, but we need to find fixed cost and variable cost from total cost. So we already have our total cost. And now because we use the low activity and determine the variable cost per unit, so variable cost for 1 unit is 2291. That's the variable cost for 1 unit. So what's the variable cost now for 70 units? So the variable cost for 1 unit is 32.73. So the variable cost for the 70 units costs with 2291. Right? So the total cost is equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. Or let me do another. Let me leave the mathematics style. This is mathematics style. We have the formula already. So I will do another step, another format. So I have here my total cost. My total cost, I'm going to use the total cost for the low activity is 3,750. So 3,750. This is my total cost. Okay. And now I have my variable cost. What's the variable cost? Calculator already here to be 2,291. So, and the answer here would be my fixed cost. If you don't want to use the formula, total cost is equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. If you don't want to use the formula, I just do this one. 3750 minus 2291. So my fixed cost is 1,400. 0.59. So this is my fixed cost. I've solved the question. Now I've differentiate fixed cost from variable cost using that equation. Okay. I told you we're only using two data to calculate fixed cost and variable cost. This is a problem for analysis purposes. That's why we have the introduction of the regression analysis, the correlation analysis. We use all the data. We'll get to that. Now, if I want to use the low method, so you can understand better. So now this I use the low. Now let me use the high. The high activity for calculating variable cost per unit is 32.73 already. So here I use the low activity of 470. So now let me use the high activity of 125. We're supposed to arrive at the same answer. Okay, so now we go. So variable cost in total is equals to variable cost per unit, which we already calculated to be 32.73 multiplied by 125. 2.73 multiplied by 125. This will give 4091. 4091.25. Leave the point 4091. Okay. This is our figure of variable cost. So now, if I bring my total cost, because now I use the I activity, so I'm going to use the total cost for the I activity. Total cost for the I activity in this question is 5,550. Total cost is 5,550. And I have my variable cost. My variable cost to be 4091. And therefore, my fixed cost supposed to be 550. My fixed cost supposed to be 1459. So see the same answer to this. So whichever method you use, you have the same answer in separating your fixed cost from variable cost. Okay. I hope these two questions make sense to you. All right. Okay. Thanks for your attention. Practice more questions on this one. I have other questions, but these two questions already solve the difference. This can be assignment for you. And this is a theoretical question. Suppose a company electricity cost were $5,000 when production was at its highest level of 10,000, and $3,000 when production was at the highest level of 5,000 units. Using high-low method, the variable cost per unit of production would be, okay, let's see how we handle this question. Remember our format? High, low. We are told that electricity cost of 5,000 when production was at highest level of 10,000. So high is 10,000 and low is 5,000. And the cost here is 5,000 and the cost for this is 3,000. So the difference, step 2, 5,000. Yeah, the difference 2,000. This is in value. So now our variable cost per unit is equals to, remember, the value divided by unit. So it's 2,000 divided by 5,000. These are variable cost per unit. Okay. So it's 2,000 divided by 5,000. So this gives me 0.4. This is my variable cost per unit, 0.4. Now, what's my variable cost in total? My variable cost in total is equals to my variable cost in unit 0.4 multiplied by number of units. If I want, I use the high unit, which is 10,000, or the low unit, which is 5,000, whichever. So I can use the high unit, which is 10,000. So 0.4 at 10,000, this will give me 4,000. So this is my variable cost in total, 10,000. So remember, our fixed total cost is equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. My total cost, because I use the I activity of 10,000, automatically my total cost is going to be 5,000. Is equals to my fixed cost, what I'm looking for, plus my variable cost, I have it here to be 4,000. So therefore, my fixed cost is equals to 1,000. So this ends the lecture for high-low method. Okay. See you in our next class for correlation. Bye-bye.